So Samir, thank you for being on the show, man. I really appreciate it. I've been meaning to connect and appreciate you taking the time. I guess that first question, you studied engineering. I saw that you had an engineering background. Why did you decide to do an MBA and study in business as well?
Okay, thank you for having me. Uh, well, I've always been attracted to business to start with. So, from a very young age, I always kind of wanted to do a little something silly on the side. And when I finished my engineering, I wanted to take advantage of a trend that I felt adding specialization to business. So I thought it was a good opportunity instead of going even deeper in engineering into a master's, open it up in business. And at a time where most business were just business, I would come with a very strong technical background that adds to it business savviness, which was not something that at the time was everybody had. So I thought it was a good opportunity to get the best of both worlds kind of
Yeah, I
skill.
feel like many people say it's like, hey, if you have an engineering background, an MBA is kind of like next logical step. But I feel like you did it at a time where it wasn't a common practice, so you were able to like go do something that most people weren't doing back then.
Yeah, it was the beginning of these programs, MBA law, MBA medical, MBA, etc. Just because you want to ensure that people that are building a foundation, whether it's technical, whether it's legal, that they have this roundness from a business standpoint. So yeah, it was a choice, and the norm was typically let's go to work or let's go. Well, I did work in parallel, but or
Yeah,
go to get a master's in
yeah,
engineering, which probably is a good thing too. I just
yeah.
feel I got
And
more out
after
of this
school, when did
mileage.
you realize you were going to be a bad employee? And I say that kidding because I feel that. Yeah. Well, tell me about
It's
it.
true. Yeah. So, well, I was having discussion today. I think I'm one of those employees that if you treat me right, I'm one of the best employees you'll have, and if you don't treat me right, I'm the worst nightmare of an employee you have. And in general, I've constantly suffered at employment. Literally suffered. I wanted to be out from the day I started, and I went. I think I did 10 years of career before I even started Explorance, if not more. No, probably. I don't remember, 10, 15, let's say. But good employee if I believed that the management was in good faith, good ethics, and they were actually treating me like a human. And if it was one of these where the do this in the name of business, no appreciation, no motivation, you don't get my engagement, I'm a pretty bad employee. Which is not
When
what I
did you
wish for
realize
myself
that you
here,
wanted
but
to like go
that's me.
down the entrepreneurial route?
Uh, I I would say a long time ago. Only I've never thought of it as the story I want to tell. I always had thought of it as the I'm out of employment, I do it my way, and I'm gonna be rich. That was the foundation long time ago, and it never worked. So I've tried when I was studying. I've tried after I've studied. Throughout the 15 years of employment, I've had all kind of interesting businesses, and each one of them, I always say, Florence, the only business that when it got successful, I actually kept. In general, the other ones, the minute they started working, I said, I'm not sure it's the story I want to tell, and then fold and start again. But the urge has been there for a long time. I would say at least since I started my MBA, my first project was a business that I actually ended up starting. And the two key drivers at the beginning was I want to be rich fast and easy, and I hate employment. Until I started Explorance, where it shifted, and I said I actually want to build something with a meaning, a story I could tell. I'm going to work really hard, and I'm going to create an environment where people like me will thrive and be happy and be engaged, and money will
Yeah, it's
follow.
interesting. I find
And
like you
that's
reverse the
that's where we
order,
are
right?
today.
Like purpose before financial success and financial freedom. And walk us through the idea of
Yeah,
Explorance, like
yeah,
how it came to be, kind of the genesis of it.
sure. To start with, it's not something like I said. For me, the main purpose of building a business was the journey. So I could have gone into different businesses. So it didn't start by saying I have a passion towards what we're doing. It became a passion over time because I like the impact. It kind of gives a voice to students, it gives a voice to employees. But we didn't start that way. The way I started it is I met four developers that could build enterprise software. I believed that there was a big opportunity to have enterprise caliber feedback software. I said, let me jump in it, and it gives me the opportunity to do something. And at the time I had $55,000. I thought this is plenty of money to be able to take me from hiring four people, running the business, flying through, and doing everything. Obviously, it came with a lot of nightmares along the way, but I guess that's how you learn bootstrapping. And once I started doing it, I realized fast that what I'm enjoying is more the journey, the fact that I'm running business like I am in person. This is how I looked this morning. This is how I look in this podcast. I don't have to behave differently because it's work. Nobody has to. And, our motto is kind of be yourself, reinvent yourself. The premise is just as long as you challenge yourself and try to reinvent, never try to be somebody else in the name of business. And if you do it the right way, it may be a longer path, but can you outperform every company out there? And that's my obsession in general, is that one day we can come and look and say, the story we told that seems like it's anticlimactic for businesses, because usually it should be driven differently. We still did that achievement of performance. So you can actually run a business where you put humans first, where you care about people, where you challenge people, where you bet on people and make it happen. And if you notice, that's me explaining Explorance. So we didn't really cover what we do, because what we do is more the catalyst or the engine, but the reality, my mission was around that. Now, obviously, because I met the right people, because I had a great idea at the time that happened to be lucky, because when I did my market research after we spent most of my 55K, I realized there were 140 other companies that did the same thing, but we were in it. So we continued. But at the beginning, I thought I was genius, and I discovered this niche in an industry. Now, here's the cool part: is obviously over time, those 140 became maybe five, right? And we're still here, and we're still moving in the right direction. And some of these five are amazing, and we aspire to them, and we aspire further. But the reality again is that notion of resilience, of moving forward, staying real, betting on people, and taking the time to build that pyramid of a
Yeah, I
foundation.
find the way
That's
you
what
explain something
what
so interesting
excites me.
because it's
That's the
like you
business
explained
that
only
I'm in.
who you guys are, and you haven't explained yet the what you do. But I find the two are the same. Um, so yeah, maybe explain a little
Yes.
bit about your product, your solution.
Hmm. Yeah. Yes. As I should have. Yeah, it's my flow. So basically, what we focus on is basically is to provide solutions, and for me, solution is technology primarily, associated services if needed, and the know-how in a packaged way to support two industries: higher education and large enterprise. And the way we support them is by ensuring that if you're a student or an employee, we're providing these organizations all the feedback they need to optimize the journey of that employee or that student from the moment they know that organization exists till the day they stop advocating for it. So literally everything around listening to their needs, meeting their expectations, developing their skills, developing their knowledge, developing their competencies on the measurement side. So we're kind of the sensors. We set up the sensors to ensure that everybody's heard, and that voice is becoming analytics, and that analytics is driving decisions that are for the benefit of the employee and the student, because we believe that if you bet on them, if you listen to them, if you engage them, you will benefit greatly as an organization, but also you'll leave a more lasting impact in it. So that's on a high level. And the way we join those two industries in our mind is a lifelong learner. So from the moment you start learning till the day you stop learning in your life is where we're going to meet you and advocate for your interest to make sure that you're being heard, you're being supported, you're being developed, to provide obviously better performance and better engagement and so on. So in general, this is roughly our solutions, and we have a very good position in the market. So work about, I would say, 750 organizations. The focus is the large enterprise and the universities and colleges. We work about possibly 25 of the top 100 universities globally, 35% of the Fortune 100. So there's a very strong base, very strong set of partnerships that we've been with for a long time, And our goal basically is to continue growing and evolving, but again in a sustainable way, to ensure that we're constantly adding value to customers, to our employees, to their
Maybe talk about
families,
the
and
product a
to
little bit.
the
Like, I want to get
community
back to the
wherein
growth
we're.
in the sustainable way. I find that interesting. But the product, so you're
Mhm,
using software to address this notion of feedback and learning. What does the end
mhm,
product look like in terms of a different touch point?
mhm.
For the end user.
Yes, yes. So let's zoom in on enterprise, let's say, right? So basically, the way we look at it, and we look at it under a journey analytics framework. And there's a very big difference between experience and journey. If you look at, if I don't know, if I think of Uber, for example, Uber, the reason they disrupted the taxi industry is that instead of them looking at touch point, how was your taxi ride? Was it good? Was it bad? That's it. They actually optimize every area of that experience. From you don't have to call somebody. You don't have to give them your address. You don't have to wait from the window to wait till that car misses your house and then go and wait for the taxi to come back. You don't have to worry about, is this person gonna talk? Are they gonna know where they're going to take me? Are they taking me the right way? I'm gonna have to tip them before I leave. Now I have to wait 5 more minutes with this person, to be able to do the payment. So what they did is they fixed the journey and they took over, and whether it's Airbnb or whatever. So our notion is the same. We're coming, I'm saying, at the end of it, you have an employee that knows your company exists, is going to evolve within your organization, is going to leave. And the main premise we're looking at is, the first piece is obviously you want to measure the experience touch points, onboarding surveys, recruitment surveys, engagement, learning and development, exit. So every touch point you want to make sure is measured automatically in a way that whenever there's a transaction between an employee and their company, student and the university, we're able automatically to follow up with them, entice them to give their feedback, take that feedback, translate it into analytics, and give it to the right stakeholders. But there is another piece: is you don't want to wait between two engagement surveys to know an employee is disengaged. Usually these are run yearly, at best quarterly. So we need the continuous listening piece to it. And we say, we want to make sure that at any point in time, if there's an employee that needs to be heard, or a manager or a leader that needs to get insight that they need, they don't need to have to wait for that static touch point. So that's the second piece of it. And the way we look at it, say there's the experience measurement touch point, there's the continuous listening, and then how do you tie all that into a unified story? Instead of saying, if I do engagement surveys to help improve engagement, for me, if I are running an engagement survey, so you can hire better, onboard better, develop better, engage better, and avoid attrition. So then suddenly all these touch points start feeding each other, and what you end up getting as a company is the intelligence you need to move a taxi industry into a Uber
Yeah, it's
industry,
very interesting.
and
You're,
that's
you're
really
you're
where
touching
we
all
play.
the different touch points along the customer journey. In this case, from a student or someone in the enterprise.
Mhm.
How do
The
you
employee,
think
yeah,
about competitive
yes.
advantages? It seems like today it's a crowded space, right? HR tech, in the past 5 years, but you guys have been around for a while. What do you think
Mhm.
gives you guys a barrier to
Yes.
entry? How do you think about it? Is even competitive advantage a notion that you think about?
I strongly believe that at any point in time, you're going to have a lot of competition. 2 years down the road, each one of those organization was at when they met were looking in a different direction, and they're no longer competitors. So my philosophy to start with is, as long as you have enough roadmap, enough vision, enough direction, 5 years down the road, I don't dwell too much on who's trying to reach, who's trying to compete, because I know we're just literally crossing point and we're going to be somewhere else. That said, we live in the moment. We're a bootstrap company, so we have to generate business, we have to win deals. Every organization has an approach, and we have some mighty competition in the industry. We're kind of in the education side, we're probably the strong player, and the higher ed, we're the underdog, though we do have a massive market share. But our approach is coming on it differently. We first of all, we think the technology is very solid. It's built as infrastructure. It's not a point application. So basically, once you set it up, it's like the Salesforce of feedback, or the SAP of feedback. You put it in, the machine is functioning, feedback is captured, insight being distributed. Second, we're looking at it in a holistic view. We're not looking at it as measure these distinct touch points. We're saying we need to look at it as a journey. So the continuous listening piece, the analytics across the touch points, these are these are elements that are very unique and we believe that are essential. Today you're going to probably need to work with 5 vendors to be able to get the depth of what we can offer just by ourselves. The third one is the partnership approach. We every customer is a partner. We're obsessed about the humans. So usually I say for me uh, a successful implementation is when the person that is bet on us and the person that is using our system get promotion. So we count promotions that happen. We don't look at did you. Of course, we want to renew, we want the upsell, but this is again where when you shift the paradigm, if you focus on that piece, guess what happens? The whole financial piece will come very nicely into place, and it's less of a fight. So I think that genuineness, the uniqueness of the culture, our commitment to people. We have a very strong community focus with our customers. They own our user conferences. They own the community. We just manage it for them. We don't allow in our conferences to go and try to sell or market. We let it be communal, etc. So there's this approach to we're people first. We want you to benefit. We want you to be proud of it. Let's do it. And just I think of COVID. My philosophy was we need to sacrifice because our customers may be suffering. I didn't take the approach of let us hide altogether until this is gone, or what, I understand we're suffering because a lot of us are doing that. I'm saying, what, let's choose our first priority. It's the people that are paying our salaries, which are the customers. Let's think of them first. Let's sacrifice for them, and what's left, let us have other sacrifice for us. Depending on how we function. Who's gonna sacrifice for who, type of thing. So I strongly believe if all solutions are alike, and I've had to choose one differentiator, is that partnership piece. And actually, it ends up taking your solutions constantly to a different place that's very well adapted for the success of
It
our
sounds like you've
customers.
had many years of like this compounding effect of a strong feature set, strong customer relationships. I want maybe
Yes.
to go back in time a little bit. And was there a particular moment where you had a breakthrough or there was an important milestone that you thought, okay, I have something here beyond just this small pet project. I see a huge opportunity. Curious, was there a moment in time where this transpired, or was it maybe more gradual?
Uh, yeah, I'm the kind of person that says, go as far as you can see. And then once you're there, you can look further. I'm not anytime, I have my big goal and it's not tangible because if you put a tangible goal, you could be punished of being guaranteed to reach it or not reach it. So first of all, I do have my, 10, 20-year plan and what it means and what it is. But the reality is, when I started it, my mind was if I sold one, it's success. When we sold, because it means we created something from scratch that somebody was willing to exchange for money. Then it was our first million. Then it was our first employee that can afford to buy a house. Then it was our next 5 million. Then it was, oh shit, we can be $1 billion business. Hey, we can be this. Hey, we can do that. It is interesting, and obviously I would, and second thing is not only how far can we go, but how far can we go with the value proposition we're putting on the table and actually bootstrapped. I'm not obsessed with bootstrapping. I think eventually, obviously, to create value, you may need to consider something else. But just getting where we are today without getting any institutional investor, starting with that 55K gives us in general here a lot of pride because, we know it's against the wind, but you learn how to, the money you make is the money you use to live. That's what I see about sustainable growth. It's a bit longer as a journey. You always have to create the money so that you can create the growth. The money doesn't come before the growth. You have to create the business. But the beauty of it is these building blocks, when they build, they're just unshakable. So it's enjoyable. I don't think there's a limit to how far Explorance can go. My obsession is to ensure it's sustainable, that the value it creates remain where it started. We got a lot of help from government, from province, from Quebec, etc. And for me, it's very important to respect that and ensure that I'm not doing it so that I can be enriched one day personally and then turn my back on it and it's just like gone. I want to be able to realize that there's a point where there was something that gave it much more value than I could and be able to look at it and see it thrive. And the second part is happening anyway. Like at the end, if you build value translation into money. The beauty is, I don't know what to do with it. It doesn't matter. It's good. Maybe safeguard the future of the children. Maybe allows me to do more or build bigger things. But today, my mindset is this could go really, really far, and I'm enjoying the journey, and I could see myself leading it another
Yeah,
20-fold,
it
and then
seems
we'll
like
see
you've given
from there.
yourself a lot of optionality, right? So you have options at the table, but I find the core insight you're bringing is
Mm,
for me to have this optionality, I need to create something that creates value and that's sustainable. Uh, and I
yeah,
find it also
yeah,
goes against
yeah. And there's no exit mindset.
yeah. No, it's fine.
Yeah,
It's
sorry,
fine.
go ahead, please.
It's on this point, expounding on this point, because I find today, in the media, it's very cool to go raise capital, like get a big brand name VC behind you,
Mhm.
but you seem to have taken the opposite path of saying, listen, we're going to stay bootstrapped, and it's fine. You seem to have the open mind of like, no, not for now. I'm sure if someone comes, with the right conditions, maybe you consider it.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, I imagine you've got some grief. I'm sure you've had many people kind of like knocking on your door saying, "Hey, you have a tech company in Montreal, that has quite a bit of success." How have you responded to people when they've come, calling and throwing money probably at you?
Yeah. Well, I'm a strong believer that two things. One is I should never be for sale personally, right? Because that will make sure you always make the right decisions. And and the second piece is you can never reject an offer until you have it in your hands. So to come and say I don't want to entertain that, I'll be narrow-minded. So in general, I go all the way with anything. It's when it comes to what it tangibly means, and then I look at the value created, the value I see ahead, and the impact of a partnership, because at the end it is a partnership. It's like a marriage, whether you bring a VC, a PE, or whatever you do is a partnership. The impact of it, and my assessment is always, does this option bring more value to the story we built than the status quo? Does this person bring more value than me? And you know what? It's not a legacy play. It's not something where I have an exit in mind or anything, but it's always about what's best at that time. And I think that's cool because it gives us that freedom to choose. And I think the day we choose, and I don't think it's going to be long. I think we're at that place and the scale that it's almost where it reverses, where the opportunity cost that you miss out on may be bigger than the notion of continuing the bootstrapping path. But we'll see. I'm open minded. The good news, I'm going to be
Yeah,
strong on the negotiating table, right, which you don't get at the beginning. And if there's the value built so far is probably pretty interesting, and I still have a lot of stake too. So that's the hidden benefit. And I've worked with entrepreneurs a lot, and I would feel sad because I realize like a person would be in their second year and they only have 10% of their own company because they brought in so much money and stuff, and then at the end saying like you're an employee
yeah,
already
yeah,
on day one. So I'm a strong believer of delaying that thing, making sure you have a real value, and then you probably attract the right partners that will not just bet on you in case you succeed, but actually invest in you and with you to bring you to the next level, and it will be enjoyable because now we get the expertise of massive organizations that have done it successfully, that are looking at you as the platform and not
yeah,
as an
yeah. I
experiment.
find it's like I realized two specific examples, like you said, like the 10% ownership. I've known a few companies that have that, and then the opposite end of the spectrum. Some
Yeah.
well-known stories in Montreal where owner didn't need to get outside capital, and then at the right time came
Yeah.
in and was the right strategic move to bring an outside partner. Um, Maybe to change
Yes.
gears a little bit,
Yeah.
but relate on the same topic, like in preparing for this interview and seeing some of your previous talks and some of your writing, you've spent a lot of time thinking about culture
Hmm.
and company building more broadly. So I'd like to maybe pick your brain, also selfishly speaking, on
Hmm.
what are some of those principles that you've distilled. If you can talk about that, it'd be great.
Absolutely. And there is the good, the bad, the ugly of these things, right? So, again, we're coming back to the same story, same belief, and my theory in culture is simple. If you trust people like the adults they are, then you don't need to oversee them. You can actually liberate them. You can give them the freedom they need to operate, to make decisions, to make mistakes. and you save on a lot of administrative overhead, and you eliminate a lot of the waste that managers have to go through to calculate time off, to calculate who did what, who didn't do what. So that's the first piece of it. It's more trust. And I strongly believe saying, we're trusted to raise a family, we're trusted to drive a car, we're trusted with so many things. But God forbid, you don't have rules around how many days off you should take a year when you're at work. It doesn't match to me. And it comes down to the second notion, which is reciprocity. Is we're a high intensity bootstrapped organization. A lot of time I expect people here to work 16 hours in a day. I can't come and I say to somebody, you know what, the work needs you, and not give them the right to come and say, my life needs me now. I need to be away 16 hours a day. So my premise is more that, eliminating that hypocrisy of saying, I can pull on you as a resource when needed, but when you need to pull, it's there. So that's the second foundation. So the first one is more, trusting us, we're adults, we can't be that bad. The second one is reciprocity. Uh, the, the third one is, being able to acknowledge that if you win the hearts of the families of the people that we work with, then we have the utmost engagement we can get from these people. And when, I always, my statement would be, my goal is to make an employee's partner love us more than the actual employee. Because when that employee is disgruntled, when that employee is not seeing the right thing, when that employee is getting an offer, when that employee is questioning, you have that partner that will go and say, shut up and go back to work. This is a great place. I really like them. So again, that's expanding a step beyond just the direct employee. We're saying, at the end of it, every time we want to give an award to an employee, it's something to their family. And it struck me because there used to be times where everybody would wait to be the best salesperson of the year so that you can go with your colleagues on a retreat in some island. And me, I look and say, what, if somebody does that to me, I'm sure my wife will not be pleased. So is it really an engagement tool, or are you actually giving more reasons for the partner to not want you to be in this company? So I look at it the other way around. If you actually succeed, I'm going to find what your partner and your children, if you have any, or whatever it is that you like, actually deeply desire and like. And I'm going to make sure if I give you a gift, it's a gift that encompasses that, and that's always for that whole entity. So you're constantly, adding to this. Now, obviously, these things come well, the freedom of taking vacation, etc. And the last one is the performance management piece, where we look and say, you can't come a year in advance in this fast-changing world, come and predict what three things your reporting employee should do and achieve a year from now to get the raise or promotion. So one, you're taking away the point where they can come up with it. Second, anything could change in 2 months in a fast landing. Imagine COVID right now, or competition added, or market change, or elections, or whatever the hell happens, something changes. So my premise is different. Each one of us has the responsibility to say, these are the goals I have for Explorance this year, and they're detailed, and they're also on the cornerstones of what we want: the growth, because we love to grow and prove we're successful; the loyalty, the employee churn, are we a great place to work with, are we a great place to work for, type of thing. And then when I share it, then everybody does their own goals, and they put it there, and throughout the year they can collect and gather and figure out how to build their story, so that when the year end comes, they could come and say, this is what I've done, this is why I deserve this. So you have fluidity, people, you create more accountability, you keep it big picture, and nobody is busy trying to dictate downwards. So this is the philosophy that drives me. We've been like that since 2013. No formal policies besides what's has to be done legally or whatever. No rules besides be yourself, integrity, stick by the values, do your best every day, keep the balance in your life. The one piece or risk, and probably I'm skipping to another question, is around that is just how do you make sure that culture is always the reward for performance, business performance. And what I see is sometimes it fluctuates, and I have to constantly come and adjust depending on how many people we add in a year or stuff like that, where suddenly the culture becomes the objective, and for the culture is the gift that we earn because we're able to operate in an efficient way and prove that this actually drives higher performance. So for me, it's really critical that we go back to the same thing as we want to prove that if business does the right thing, right, you drive, you outperform everybody. So if I lose any one of those two, I'm usually not very motivated in the business. And obviously they do drop sometimes, and you have to kind of align the culture or the performance.
Yeah, I was going to say it really shows that you've obviously spent quite a bit of time thinking about it and also building it
Yeah.
out. I'd say you mentioned no rules before, and like maybe a quick. I don't know if
Hmm.
you've read the latest book by a CEO of Netflix called it's called No Rules Rules. Uh,
Hmm.
it's funny because many of the principles that you're referencing, are also part of this also small successful company. So I like this notion of treating people as adults, right? Like everyone is kind of a grown up. So right,
Exactly.
more rules, more constraints, kind of like puts people in a box. I kind of find that's goes against
Yes.
best principles today. Like give people authority, let delegate, hold them accountable, but just let them run with it. I
Exactly.
always find that's kind of a best approach. I
Exactly.
imagine it's been a little bit harder. Considering you were built, as a as an office, you're in your office today. How have you guys adjusted in in the remote world? And I imagine from a business perspective, like you
Mm.
mentioned a little bit before, you're staying as partners for your customers. Education itself has been challenged. So you're just curious to see how agile you've been, how you've adapted internally and externally.
Yeah. So it's one of these things where we adapted. The first 3 months, in my opinion, we adapted really well. It actually gave us an opportunity to optimize our operations in a way that our profitability was probably doubled. Okay, so it was the positive impact of it because everybody was forced into a step back. Productivity increased. What we do as a business is actually it becomes more essential when everybody is distant, right? Because listening and feedback becomes more difficult when you're away. The second part of it, I think, 3 months after, what I personally experienced is that a lot of people started burning out. Not because of work demands, it's because the boundaries between work and life and the children or whatever it is you have to deal with, the loneliness of being, etc., started having toll on mental, on emotional health, but also on physical well-being. And then suddenly what I notice is the opposite. And then as a business, you start feeling guilty. It's like you don't know how much do you push. How much do you not push? I'm not seeing the people. I used to be able to look at somebody and say, "Hey, you look like you're tired. You're fired for a day," or something like that.
Yeah,
You can't even see that, and the problem is they become silent. So, from a culture standpoint, I found it very hard to balance that notion of we're customer obsessed, let's sacrifice for our customers, and how much do you want them to sacrifice, knowing that they're reaching these points that are a struggle. On the business standpoint, because what we do is essential, we didn't feel a dent in terms of the existing business. The new business got delayed because companies got obsessed about infrastructure. So the first obsession was how do I get everybody remote? How do I make them efficient remote? How do I make sure that they're okay remote? Now I want to start instilling measurement strategies, listening strategies, etc. So I strongly believe we're the probably post January phase on that piece. Now this is the next 3 months. So we're talking here, maybe end of September ended. We're seeing now a little bit more normality. I see maybe 10% of our staff here in the office. It's already better than nothing. I come here 4 times a week. I started coming in September. I didn't come from March to September. We're actually probably the first company to close shop before even Quebec asked us to close 2 weeks before. I literally just said right away, I'm taking a responsible leadership role and say, everybody goes home. Everybody don't worry about anxiety. Until October 30, nobody's gonna come. We did do a 10% collective salary cut because we didn't know how bad it could be until was it September 30, I think. Yeah, September 30 till October 1st. So everybody got that comfort of that. And now I find myself on the other spectrum because I'm seeing that for most people this works. For some of them, the cure is much worse than the disease. And now I see that I have a leadership responsibility to invite people to come
yeah,
that want to come and make sure they understand that we do it safe, we do it right, If you feel you're too lonely and it's affecting two groups that I notice, the single people, the younger people, and the people with young children. If you need to be here, if you need to see humans, it's worth for me. I'm being a role model. Follow past. Don't worry about it, because at the end you have to balance. You know what is hurting me more and what works best for me. So we're getting bits and pieces, but candidly, from an impact on the culture that we built, that is very founded around our playroom, our pool table, the terrace we're building, the interaction between everybody. I constantly rotate chairs. I sit with a department, every month or two. I sit with another. This whole piece is gone, and I feel like there is an engagement issue.
Yeah.
And I am struggling in reflection in terms of a company that was built on what we were built like. How does it look like with a remote component? And how do we balance that part with the ambitions that I had of bringing work-life integration, where we were all in the gym here, we all had the benefits here, we were all able to allow our families to be here. We did spring break for kids. We had a daycare at Explorance just during spring break, so that like this whole notion of integrating everybody is shaken. It's not having an impact on the top line of the business or bottom line, but I can see a cost on the
Yeah.
on the culture
You know, you mentioned it's
and the
the engagement
employees.
issue. I think is really real, right? Because fundamentally, it's like everyone's going through
Yeah,
issues at home and at work, and it's
yeah,
been tough. So
it's
I
tough.
find it seems like you guys have managed better than
Yeah,
most. Maybe to zoom out and think about what's around the corner, right? Once we get a little bit back, like you said, where it seems to be heading back to normality. What excites you in the industry? What do you think is happening in the industry that is important that maybe isn't as widely recognized, but
mhm,
considering from where you're sitting in the CEO chair, you see it
yeah,
something big.
sure. Yeah, so you see, the feedback I gave you just a few minutes ago was more tactical, right? So we're saying basically drop in engagement, drop in employee well-being, guilt of trying to see how much can I push to make sure the business work, because you need to earn so you can feed your family and feed your employees. Top line moving, bottom line is good, profitability is good, great, right? So but that's tactical. On the strategic level, when I look in the impact of it, is one part gave us a step back. So we got time to everybody to take a step back and be able to reflect on everything, on what does culture 2.0 look like, what does business 2.0. What we did, the very cool decision is that the minute it happened, I ran into a mode that's like World War II style in my mind. Is like when the whole world was struggling, the
Hmm.
US went and doubled down on production. They said, everybody stop everything. Let us just go as far as we can with the products. And that is what turned it into world leader. So what we've done literally since March is a lot of people that we had that were in roles that could have been let go, because there was no more marketing to be done at one point. There's no more sales to be. Instead, what we did, we said, we want to keep everybody. We took that 10% collective thing. Now let's put everybody on product. And since then, even me, 70% of my time up to probably 2 weeks ago was on the product. So we're all on it, and we went leaps with that. And I think these kind of advantages strategically are powerful, and that's thanks to COVID type of thing. Personal step back, being closer to families, traveling less. They have some blessings in disguise. The real opportunity is that forced higher education to make that leap that it was supposed to do 10 years ago, with being able to balance a hybrid model of education where the teacher could be remote, the student could be remote, they could be in class, eliminating paper, doing more instead of focusing on how much money am I going to get from the government, and what should I do to get that. The obsession now is about the student experience, which is something we've been pushing on. Is how do we make sure that your students are engaged, that you're getting more students in, that these students are graduating and not leaving halfway through. They're learning well, and when they go to the enterprise workforce, they're actually equipped from competency development standpoint too. So it shifted that paradigm, and now we're seeing that conversation be much more welcome than it used to be 5 years ago. So literally within 9 months, I feel that there is a thought leadership jump of 5 to 10 years, and some universities are trailblazing that. But we can see already that now, when you talk about student experience, when you talk about student journey, you connect, which didn't happen before. From a implementation standpoint, like I said, it's the third phase, which is probably what I see happening as of January. On the on the enterprise side, what we've seen is more industry shift. There are industries that succeeded wildly. There are industries that got accelerated into being creative. So if you're in oil and gas, right away the mindset is, what's the alternative? How do I start planning a path to diversify? Should I shrink a little bit my workforce, focus on something, but also maybe invest on other things because people are flying less and it seems okay. People are doing Zoom meetings and they may not need to drive anymore. Maybe people want to go to cities. Cities are shifting their mindset. We're getting more people wanting to go to rural. So it changes even the economics of an Amazon model or a Lufa farm model will work probably much more interestingly than a Bay store that will open in downtown. So, me, I'm looking at it at the macro level, and obviously I'm saying there's a big shift. Uh, and again, we're not the first phase. The shift has to happen, the uncertainty has to pass. And when you look at the industries that succeeded, they got overwhelmed. So they don't have time to implement measurement strategy. Let's say you're pharmaceutical. You're busy running after that vaccine, you're getting funding, you're doubling down on your workforce. That's the thing you do after. So I see a very similar trend, but for different reasons. One is going to accelerate the industry shifts of the old industries to the new industries. It's going to give an opportunity for people not to be taken off guard. So you don't get an Airbnb or an Uber or an Amazon that will disrupt them for good, or a Tesla. They will actually be able to get that 9 months opportunity to diversify on their own and maybe become part of the solution rather than the problem. And in higher ed is a bigger focus on student experience. So in both cases, the shifts are interesting. They're motivating. The premise is to make sure that we're there, not just when they want to buy, but throughout, understanding, listening, and having unthreatening talks around me. I'm not trying to even sell you. I'm trying to understand where you're going to be. What do you think about the employee experience? What about the student? How do you see this? What are you doing with your insight? Where are you challenging? Where does well-being fit? Where does culture fit? And it allows us to evolve our framework and methodologies to be ready for the landscape of tomorrow. So, in general, positive. I'm enjoying that piece of the puzzle portion of it. And like I said, we're blessed that we didn't get affected on the renewal, on the existing business, on the bottom line, and that actually what we do seems to be very optimal for a remote or disrupted industries. So in a way, it allows us to dream a little bit more, but to be uh, respectful of the fact that people are not ready for it now, and we need to give them the space until everybody knows what's happening. No more layoffs, no more uncertainty, and I feel this is going to be our
It feels like,
time
as a
to
digital
rise.
first business, like you're going to benefit because, as is the saying in e-commerce, right? We've seen 10
Mhm.
years of growth in e-commerce in a very compressed
Yeah,
time. I never
yeah,
realized, well,
yeah,
it's not just for e-commerce, right? It's going to be for that transition is going to be also for
yeah,
all of these more established, quote unquote, traditional industries, right? Including higher ed. So your vision of like bridging that gap and like
yeah.
providing that lifelong learning, I think is you'll be able to accelerate the vision, which I find is pretty exciting.
Yeah, at least now when we say it, it's falling on an ear that's interested. Like 5 years ago, it was like, this is too distracting. All I want is this because that helps me get this. So it's more fun that way. But, again, the important part is to move from the intangible to the tangible so that we can all have fun. And I think it will be the opportunity to kind of recreate the culture version 2 of what Explorance should be after this. Because honestly, I still don't know. Nobody knows, right? There's a lot of dust that need to settle, but it will come with the business being ready for version 2 as well. And, hopefully it will be a different velocity and that's more exhilarating and enjoyable. We'll see.
Samir, well, honestly, this has been a real pleasure. A last question for you would be, where can people find out more about the work that you guys are doing?
Best thing is our website, explorance.com. And whoever is interested to follow up or discuss or challenge any of the theories that we put to the table, there's my LinkedIn account, and I think it's LinkedIn Samer Saab or something like that. So that should do too.
Okay, thank you again. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you, Nectar. It's been wonderful talking to you. Have a good afternoon. Take care.